loud enough is what I want to know.
Yes, you are. We're live, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk New York, the Facebook Live edition. This one again with our weekly Cardboard Memories edition. And joining us, as always, is Scott Stimell, right? Stimell.
Correct.
Is that correct? All right. He is the president of Cardboard Memories. They carry a full line of sports cards, autographed memorabilia. Cardboard Memories represents what is lacking in the retail and wholesale memorabilia market today. The premier company offers that special personal touch that is only known to customers who have previously done business with Scott. Scott has been collecting memorabilia for over 30 years. For the past 27 years, he successfully owned and operated one of Long Island's most reputable memorabilia retail stores. Known for his knowledge and savvy and his desire to teach others about them, Cardboard Memories possesses the honesty and integrity one should want and need from a memorabilia dealer. And we're thrilled to have him once again to talk about all things collectible. And it's been a lot of fun, and we've been getting a lot of responses. We didn't really have much time to talk before we went on air, but I'm not sure. I'm going to pop this up. I would assume you're aware of this. This past week, Shoeless Joe Jackson baseball card from 1910 sold for $492,000. What
Mark,
makes that card so valuable?
Mark, I honestly didn't want anyone to know that I sold it. Why'd you do that?
So really, why all of a sudden that particular card for so much money?
Shoeless Joe Jackson, right? I wish I would have. I have to next show bring in my ticket from that World Series, which I have, by the way. I wish I had it. Shoeless Joe Jackson, I mean, the history on Shoeless Joe Jackson and the whole scandal, I mean, it's so collectible. Vintage baseball cards are really highly collectible in general, but especially now there is a little bit of resurgence in vintage baseball cards. And to be quite frank, it's I feel it's a great investment, but you get to enjoy it. So $492,000 is an awful lot of money for a piece of cardboard. I agree.
Yeah, you think so? So, well, interestingly enough, Kip Gross in the chat room wants to know how many of those are there out there right now?
Including the one that's in my back pocket? There's two.
Yeah.
I would lie if I had the answer to that. I don't know that on that card, to be honest with you.
So, Scott, why don't you walk us through the process on looking at a card like that? Somebody brings it in and starts the bidding. How do you verify it? What do you look at to make sure that it's not somebody who's done a knockoff and is trying to say, this is one of a kind, or two of a kind, or three of a kind?
So you have to have a real, it's hard on a card like that because you don't have. It's not like you got five of them to sit there and be able to compare them. So you have to know the texture of baseball cards, the quality, and you have to be able to have it in your hand, feel it, look at it. I'm not privy to having had those in my hand. So on a specific card like that, I would probably give that to an expert like a PSA, a person from PSA that's going to be able to look at that probably with an ultra magnifying glass and look at, the period of the paper, the markings, the ink that is used back then, and be able to tell really when something was manufactured. I mean, that's the key. So they have the technology to do that on a professional level. Someone like me, I more modern stuff, and I know older stuff like the Gaudis and things like that. I can feel and touch and see it's stuff that I'm around more. I'm not around that card as much, that specific one.
So when somebody goes and says, I want to buy this, is it sold with authentication papers, or do you have to go out and spend money to get it authenticated on your own?
I mean, generally, if a car like that came through the store, I mean, you don't want to buy that blindly. You want to send that out and have it looked at by PSA, by Beckett, by SGC. Those are the few three main grading companies that I would trust with my cards. And for vintage, I probably go more with PSA or SGC. I think anyone that collects vintage would probably agree with me. Again, it's an opinion. Nothing against Beckett. They're more for modern cards. At least that's where their strength lies. But,
so more importantly, the person who asked that question, Kip Gross, the Cincinnati Reds, how much is a Kip Gross rookie card worth these days?
I guess to his family, an awful lot.
He'll have to answer that. That's for sure. One of the other things we spoke about last week, before we get into the topic of this week, which is the Brooklyn Dodgers, were the transogram figures, which growing up, I thought were the coolest things. They're up on the screen right now. Those were the cards that were on the back of them. And
those are mine, by the way. Give me a little credit.
Yeah, those are yours, and you were able to pull them out. But so as soon as we got off the air, obviously, being the idiot I am, I went immediately to eBay and I tried to find some, and I came across a Cleon Jones. Kip Gross is saying his rookie card is minus $6 right now. So I went on eBay to look for it, and sometimes things aren't as good as you remember them. Because I came across the white Cleon Jones transogram figure with basically a little sticker on the back of his number that was like falling off. They were so cheesy, but yet, even in the packaging that you have, the ones that you put up there, they look pretty cool. The packaging was everything, I guess, back then, because they look a lot like the starting lineup figures that we know from the late 90s. The cards are pretty cool, yellow background and such, but looking at them now, and you see the way the figures have gone, to the McFarlanes and all the different types and how realistic they are now, they really pale in comparison for sure.
Well, Mark, doesn't that, with everything that when you're a child, think about when you're a child, AJ, when you're a child, right? Yeah. Things that meant so much to you that you remember them in a certain way because you're a child, right? So let's put it into the perspective of playing video games, Pong, Space Invaders, whatever it may be. Look at what's going on today and how you thought that was so great then, because when you were a kid, it's so great. Think about, I think of things like shows that I watched when I was a kid. So they were so great and you thought they were so real. You watch them today and you go, what is that? Let's think about Land of the Lost or Superman jumping out the window and you just it's 1 foot away and you think, wow, it's incredible, And what you look at
right, But you take a look at baseball cards, and in some sense, some of the sets today are better than some of the sets back in the day. But then you take a look at the 60, when I was 9, 10, 11, but the upper deck cards were beautiful also later. So some things did get better. I do also, but you got to give some props. Some of the newer cards and some of I'm trying to think which. I think it was Fleer that did it on a different type of paper. It wasn't the high glossy. It was a plain finish. Those were pretty cool. Some of the Leaf Studio were pretty cool. So I mean, some things have gotten better, but those. I mean, I can't believe how much I love those. And when I saw that Cleon Jones, I go, wait a minute, like when my father bought it, didn't he say a white Cleon Jones? Really?
Well, maybe over time it faded.
They kept it in the sun, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So, go ahead, AJ.
I say the games weren't on TV. Nobody knew.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, all right. So the topic we wanted to touch on today was the Brooklyn Dodgers. Okay. And the question I have to start off about the Brooklyn Dodgers is, we all love teams that are no longer here, whether it be the Montreal Expos, whether it be the Hartford Whalers. But interesting for me is the difference in the love affair between the Brooklyn Dodgers, who there still seems a clamoring, but they're modern day, equal with the New York Giants, and there's not that same affinity to the New York Giants. So what was it about the Dodgers that still lead people to have them be more collectible? And maybe I'm talking out of school. First, the question is, are the Brooklyn Dodgers more collectible than the New York Giants? And if so, why do you think that is?
Okay, so it's not even a question. I mean, you asked the question, so it's a question. But my answer is it's really not a question because, I think from what I've heard, The Boys of Summer right there, yes, great book. I think that the Brooklyn Dodgers this is what my feedback has been over the years. They were more accessible. I'm sure that the Giants also were around. It seems like the people from Brooklyn were more connected. They had the Not Whole Gang. They had a lot of kid-friendly things that.
So I would assume you're aware.
And I also think that they were around.
Aware of this.
Summers they were around. People played, interacted with them. You remember back then, and this could go for the Giants too, but it's what I hear from the Brooklyn Dodgers is that these guys had jobs in the after the season was over, and they were very accessible and part of the community. They weren't making a tremendous amount of money, and there just seems like a big connection to the Brooklyn Dodgers, whether it's Brooklyn Lenny. Hey, Lenny. Lenny is saying that nobody liked the Giants back then. That could be it also. You know, I think the Giants were like the third child to that puzzle.
Scott, a question on this. We here in New York, this Brooklyn Dodgers value. How is this regional? I'm not picking a St. Louis Browns or something like that. If you move to different parts of the country, are there other teams that have that same type of affinity where their memorabilia is more valuable, in St. Louis or Chicago or wherever? Or is it just mystique about Brooklyn?
No, of course. I mean, no. That answer is, of course, it's whatever area you're from. You're be to that team, and then you're going to collect that because it's part of your immediate history, right? If you're going to a college, you might collect the college team because you're rah, rah, rah. So, yes, but Brooklyn Dodgers, remember, they won the World Series in 55. You have Jackie Robinson, who was a historical figure, beloved. They go to LA, they win in Los Angeles, they remain a strong franchise. There's a lot of New Yorkers that go out to California. A lot of people became Met fans after they left. That's kind of, if you were a Brooklyn Dodger fan or your father was, you graduated into, Mark, I bet you anything. Well, I don't want to bet, but was there someone in your family who was a Brooklyn Dodger fan?
Yes, my dad.
Okay, and then he brought him to the Mets because he's not going to bring him to the Yankees. So he brings him to the Mets.
But here is the interesting thing about my dad. My dad was a Brooklyn Dodger fan, but yet in his high school yearbook, his favorite baseball player was Mel Ott, a New York Giant, which was I just found kind of strange. And I never got to ask him that. He had passed away before I came across that, and it was odd. But I do have a
Mel Ott, a lefty.
But yes,
yeah, so
and my father was a lefty.
Okay, there you go. That's what I'm trying to figure out because
that could be. That's
and
look at that, for the forensic files here.
Well, that's what I do. I think about what makes somebody tick and why somebody would gravitate towards someone if they looked at him and they could relate to them. And he was, listen, you're relating to a guy that's a great home run hitter, that's a great, legendary Hall of Famer. At the time, you're going to what years? You're talking about the 40s, the early 40s?
My dad served in World War II, so I guess it's the before he went, I guess it's the late 30s.
Okay, so think about the late 30s and think about who's on Brooklyn. You don't have the Jackies. You don't have those teams as of yet. So maybe that was a guy that stood out for him.
And then when he came back home, he lived in Brooklyn. So that was, I'm sure. I mean, he's got like I don't know where it is. I found this very cool picture that he'd actually taken of Joe Black walking across the field, which is pretty cool. But it is interesting. Kip also makes an interesting point. There are so many Cubs and Braves fans now because they had their own TV stations before cable. So, that adds to the popularity of teams.
Like America's team with the Cowboys. Yes, you had Turner Braves. The Braves were always on. And Chicago was always on. For us, even in New York, it was WGN or I don't
GN.
know.
Yeah, WGN with Harry Carey, right.
And TBS was the Braves.
TBS was the Braves. So you got a chance to see. Yes, my whole family are Yankees fans. I'm a Mets fan. So let's go also back to the reason why the Met fan gravitated, the Brooklyn Dodger fan also gravitated toward being a Met fan. Well, Mark, because in 1962, half the team were former Brooklyn Dodgers, right?
Brooklyn Dodgers, that's right. Right.
Charlie Neal, you had Snyder, you had Zimmer,
Gil Hodges.
Charlie Neal,
right?
Even like Greg Goosen, the third string catcher, came from the Dodgers. He was a draft.
Right. So
Joe Pignatano, right? A number of them, right?
I don't have it here, but I have a great photograph.
Roger Craig,
yeah.
Roger Craig started the first game, I believe.
Yeah, well, Roger Craig was piece of the staff that year. And
so that's right. So they did appeal to that, and also, well, they paid homage to everyone in their colors, but obviously the blue is the Brooklyn Dodger blue, and the orange comes from the New York Giants. But interesting. That's true. Yeah. So those are some of the reasons I guess people look at, and other than Mays, there aren't, I don't think New Yorkers hold a tremendous affinity to New York Giant players other than Willie Mays. Am I correct? Are there any, like, you just mentioned the Snyders, the Koufaxes, the Hodges?
Well,
all
to belie what Lenny was saying before, my father was a Giants fan. I don't really know why, but he's from the Bronx, not from Brooklyn. And for some reason, he was a Giants fan. You look in the 30s, Mark, the Giants were far better than the Dodgers. And you look in who they have that they hot in those days. And go back to there's Bill Terry, right?
Carl Hubble,
right? So they had, they have players, you remember. But again, there's no. I think part of it also, at least from here, is the mystique of Brooklyn. That it has a charm. The ballpark itself was, a different ballpark. Look, I went to the Polo Grounds when the Mets played there. That's when I saw it. It didn't have that same, other than those ridiculously short foul lines. The Polo Grounds didn't have that same charm as Ebbets Field. It didn't have the rotunda that they have now at Citi Field. It wasn't, it was a little farther off the beaten track, as it were, than, the way of them being in downtown Brooklyn. So from the Brooklyn mystique, and, it's, I think that's what it's all about, that people feel that, and I guess, Scott, that adds to the collectible part of it, that the memories they have of the team and the place and the location, makes memorabilia more expensive, more valuable.
Right.
Well, here's another thing.
Wait, before you say it, also Brooklyn, right, is Brooklyn, right? New York Giants and New York Yankees, right? So Brooklyn is the name that's in front of, not New York. So you have Brooklyn is like, that's my own.
And how much, let's face it, let's say history was different and Jackie Robinson broke the color line as a New York Giant. Would the Giants be more, how much is Jackie important to the collectability of the Brooklyn Dodgers?
He's probably pretty important, but I don't think he's the full reason why. The Dodgers just, they kept struggling against the Yankees. There was a lot of that back and forth with the Yankees. The who's the bum, right? Who's the bum? That character is very, very collectible, by the way. Who's the bum? Right?
Yeah. Even back in their bad days in the 30s and the 40s, the Dodgers had an almost 62 Mets type of mystique about them. That lovable losers, and thank you, Mark, for covering me up. Lovable losers, things happen, with the Dodgers that, Casey Stengel with the bird on the cap. Was he a Giant or a Dodger when he did that? All the things, the symphony, the cowbell, and all sorts of things like that.
That's great stuff.
Right. So this is an interesting, comment in the chat room by Robert Bernstein. And he said, all this will end with our generation, which is interesting. A friend of mine the other day, with the passing today of Little Richard, how we all play, we get to a certain age and when you hear someone passes away, you say, oh, I already thought they were dead. So we had this conversation, like they say, you die twice. The first time when you die, and the second time is when an entire generation is gone and they've never even heard of you. So at what point are we looking for the Brooklyn Dodgers mystique and collectability to start waning?
Well, it is, sadly it is, like as Robert Bernstein comments, it is, and that's why it's the job of the historians, and to keep that memory alive. It's like saying, for instance, who saw Babe Ruth play? Nobody, but the mystique of Babe Ruth is really large today, and everyone knows who Babe Ruth is that is interested in baseball, right? It's like folk. It's like folklore, like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig from movies and whatever, Jackie Robinson movie, the Pride of the Yankees, one of my favorite movies. You think about that. Those things keep it alive, but you still have to educate people, because that's why there's museums, right? So we go back in time, but people will forget. That's why it's our job today and to teach the people beforehand. That's why I love when the younger generation has an interest or learns to have an interest in it. But it does wane, and it's everyone's job to try to, if they care, to try to keep it alive.
Mark put up the cover of the Boys of Summer a few minutes ago. If somebody comes out anytime, whether it's the Dodgers or somebody else, somebody comes out with a new book, another book on the Dodgers, or in particular, or a book on something else. Somebody came out with a book on the Giants. Would that and the book becomes popular, does that increase the market for their collectibles, or is that very short things? What makes it have staying power? Is the book was written about a team that had staying power, or does the book create the market for the staying power?
I haven't really seen a book of recents, do that. I would think that a book being turned into a movie would have a larger impact than that. I haven't really seen it, to be honest with you, personally. But it's a good question. But I think a movie is more powerful. I think visual, even though someone will read it, I think when you go to the masses with a visual movie that, will strike a chord, like you said, like it could be, like you mentioned, like Captain America or something like that, it starts to get everybody moving and thinking, and what do I have and what can I collect? I love it. So to me, it's a movie.
So people remember Shoeless Joe Jackson not because of the Black Sox scandal, because of Field of Dreams.
Correct. And it could also be like you just said, you just show a baseball card, $492,000. People start going, oh my God, $492,000. Why am I buying such and such stock? I'd rather buy this, or wow, I'm going to go start collecting whatever. Something just strikes a chord with someone. They see something on TV. They see something, put on TV that says this card sold for $1 million. Everyone thinks they have $1 million card in the house. They start looking. So
circling back to our initial conversation about regional areas, Mark Littell, obviously a big guy from Missouri, Kansas City Royals.
Is that Mark Littell right now that's up there?
Yeah, that's up there right now. So he's talking about that they still have Brownie meetings for the St. Louis Browns. So it's another team from Missouri, regional, that's no longer there. That spurs the interest. And even, I'm wearing the Hartford Whaler jersey, but here on Long Island, there's still pretty much a cult following for the Long Island Ducks, believe it or not.
Yeah,
so
yeah. We could have a show on that, because I have a lot of stuff on the Ducks another time.
So, right, but so like if you were in St. Louis, how many people would have ever heard of the Long Island Ducks? Obviously, we've heard of the St. Louis Browns, right. But I don't know if anyone here on Long Island would come into your store specifically and say, "Do you have any St. Louis Browns memorabilia?" In Cleveland, you're talking about the hockey team, the Cleveland Barons, or California, the California Golden Seals. People love those defunct teams that they saw as kids that are no longer around.
Yeah,
so I think
or the ABA, the Virginia Squires, the Spirit of St. Louis, all those.
Dr. J came up on the Virginia Squires.
Virginia Squires, right? That was his first team.
Yeah.
Listen,
so
to the Long Island Ducks, like Long Island originally, there is always cult followings for rare and unique stuff, right? So everybody loves to go back to what their childhood was or their memories. So whether it's an old sneaker that you wore, bringing back a Jordan, bringing back a sneaker that you had as a
Clydes.
kid.
Puma Clydes.
But they don't make them like they did back then. They're different now. Their remakes are all different. A car, right? So you bought a car back in the day, and you want to go get that car because now it's cool again to have that car that was, old now. So all those things is teams that you can't find, jerseys that you can't find. Even the Islanders, Gorton's Fishermen, the original jerseys go for big money.
Ooh.
to burn
fish sticks.
I'm just saying, by the way, Mark, I don't want to forget to show you something Ranger related before we end the show, because I just found something I want to show it to you. Can we go back to Mark Littell, please? That's Mark Littell for the Kansas City Royals, right?
Yes, it is.
All right, thanks, Mark. I hate to but thank you very much for giving up the channel.
Oh,
sorry. No,
ouch.
I was supposed to be
wow. All right, he just turned off, by the way.
No. I was like 10 years old, and I was supposed to go to that game, and the way the tickets fell out, friends of mine it was game 5, and I didn't go to that. But Chris Chambliss never touched home plate. But anyway.
So do you want to hear the greatest story about that?
Yes.
And I've told this on our radio show a number of times. So, and it's actually in AJ and my book, Glove Story. It's my dad had this uncanny knack of whatever game we went to, whether it be the 5th inning, he knew there'd be no more runs scored. He said, all right, let's go. All right. And, as a kid, you do whatever your dad says. He had to get up early in the morning or whatever. And we went to hundreds and hundreds of games. Yankees are losing 6-3. He goes, it's over. Let's go. Got to go. You don't want to see them celebrate, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, and if they come back, we still have games to go to, but the game's over. So we get in the car, and somewhere on the Cross Island Parkway was it the Brett home run that tied it up? I think it was the Brett home run that tied it up. Right. The Brett home run that tied it up. And then I got home to see the Chambliss home run, the walk-off. Because of that, in 1986, Game 6, he says, "Let's go." And I said, "I'm not leaving." I said, "You did this to me with Chris Chambliss. The Mets are coming back. I'm not leaving." And so we didn't. And because of that home run that I missed, I didn't miss the greatest game ever. So, yeah, that's a pretty funny story we've told a number of times.
Ask Mark. Mark, do you, when he put up his, you got a .com?
He's got his website.
All right. Mark, please friend me. But who did Brett hit the home run off of? Because I'm pretty friendly with Goose, and I know Goose wasn't on the team yet, but I know that Brett beat Goose so many times, and Goose always tells me he was the toughest out he ever had to face George Brett.
That's a good one. I don't know. Let's see. Who would it have been? I think Dennis Leonard might have started the game for the – you know what? I don't know. Most likely would have been Sparky.
Yeah, but if Sparky would have come out in the 8th and 9th inning, probably. I'm trying to think who the relievers were in 76. Yeah.
Tidrow?
Yeah, it could have been Tidrow.
Could have been Dirt.
Yeah, but Tidrow's a lefty. Was Tidrow a lefty?
Yeah.
No, Tidrow's a right.
I'm sure someone will give it. Someone will let us know who gave up the home run.
Brett was the biggest.
To Brett.
biggest thorn in the Yankee side. Unbelievable.
All right, so let's get back. Excuse me, no cough button here on Facebook Live, unfortunately. You notice I did that though, all right? All right, so let's get back to some Brooklyn Dodger memorabilia. Let's take a look at some of the things you have. So you mentioned the pin, the bum. Yeah. So first of all, what's the origin of the bum? And why is it? It was Grant. Mark Littell said it was Grant Jackson who gave up the home run.
Grant Jackson on the Yankees. Grant Jackson.
Yep.
Grant Jackson.
Yeah, it was Grant. Yeah. All right. And then so that's what people saying, definitely Grant Jackson. All right, so the Dodger bum is up on the screen now. What makes first of all, do you know the origins of the bum? Why is it so collectible, and what does something like this go, and where would people find these days?
Well, that's kind of rare. I have a lot of stuff that I could show you, like this comes from the buttons and pins, the collectible buttons and pins that is one of my favorite things to collect. That is probably 1950-ish. That specific pin, value-wise, I think it's a few $100s. To me, they should be more money, but again, there's not as much of a collecting base for them. I think one day you'll have a renaissance, and people will realize that these original buttons and pins are more valuable than they think. We talked about that. We touched on that with the Clemente button and back. It's a matter of the condition. I think the reason why certain things aren't as worth as much money is because there's a lot of reproduction things, and people can't really tell the difference. So I think that seeing stuff on the internet, people don't know whether to trust if something's real or not. So,
and besides, 1950 was a really good year, Mark.
Year you were born?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not as good as 1960. Not as good as 1960 though. So here's the bum again. And what exactly is this?
Okay. So that is, and this is all part of my collection. These aren't things that I found on the internet. These are things that I collected and that I love. So that's a large visor. You would buy these visors that would go over your hats for extra, I guess protection. They're hat visors, and let me see if I can find some other samples of what they are, and you could see. And
AJ, please, I beg you, don't ask him for the George Theodore, visor. I'm begging you, AJ.
So, I won't.
So these have little
Rod Keneal.
So these are in really nice shape, and you see there's little holes that you would punch through. You put string through it, and you'd put it on like the visor of a hat. So cool. It's just a cool collectible that was, let's see if I can see if it has a year. So this is 1937. Can you see it?
1937. Wow. So 75 some odd years from now, your grandchildren will be sitting at Cardboard Memories selling, New York Mets facial masks with the Met logo on them.
I hope not.
Right.
Here's my Dodgers ring. Here. I got a Dodgers ring here. See my Dodgers ring? Can you see it?
So that would be now. Where were those given out? Where were those sold? What were those like?
You'd buy these out of a candy machine, like a vending candy back in the 50s.
A vending machine.
Yeah, so you know.
So they were probably a penny. And how much are those now going for these days?
I'd be lying if I knew, but I would say something like this is probably $100, maybe more.
Yeah, interesting.
So pretty good investment for a penny.
Right. Better than any penny stock most people out there have today, for sure. Again, like those visors, again, it's all about the foresight of, knowing what to hold on to, or just not even knowing what to hold on to. It's just a matter of someone didn't throw that out. And, it's there. So it's interesting again. And this is something that you've said over and over again. And this is what Robert put in the chat room. What's it worth? Ask yourself the question. You set the market. What are you willing to pay? That's what it's worth. And you run into that every day.
Well, it's a matter of supply and demand, right? Is it on the marketplace? Right. It's probably a rare. I have to look into it a little bit more. I haven't. This is stuff that I'd gotten a while ago that I just, I look through and for my enjoyment. I mean, it's part of my collection. But again, he's right. It's what someone's willing to pay, and it's how rare it is. And if you have a Brooklyn Dodger fan who thinks they have everything and they don't have that, then you complain.
Scott, does it matter the original origin, if it was something that was, we go to Met days, they have, magnetic schedule day, or they have these giveaway days with these trinket type of things that really have value. Does it matter whether it's something going back to the Dodgers, whether it's something that the Dodgers themselves gave out, or whether it's some company that was a sponsor of the Dodgers, whether it was given out someplace aside from Ebbets Field? Does the origin matter?
Yes, it does. And it depends what it is. It could be an advertisement that was done through Schaefer Beer. There's a lot of team photos. There's a Brooklyn Dodgers ads and original advertisements. Depending, there's a team photo that I forgot what went into it. There were stuff that you would get. It would be behind the register at a 5 and dime back in the day that would have a picture of the Dodgers, and then there would be giveaways out of it that they would give out. So if you have those original advertisements, they're worth exponentially more money because they're connected to something. It goes back to the rarity, the origin. But yes, if it's a giveaway at a stadium, even today, people are collecting that giveaway. People are more in tune to collecting today because everything has been put a value on instantaneously. Back then, you collected more. You loved it, and you loved the game, and it became collectible.
So Star Wars set last year will eventually have value.
It depends. Listen, if you laugh, but it could if they make a finite amount of them and you can't get to them. It's what they try to create value today by making something limited and rare. People will wait online to go to a game they might not go to because they want to get the bobblehead, and they sit there and they wait. They bring somebody else with them because they want to get a bobblehead that's going to sell for $75. So and they only make 2,000 of them. So they're creating.
Or like you said, you had the Mother's Day medallion from the Mantle, home run, the 500 home run game, and you had the ticket stub. So to that end, anything that in particular happens in that game, and for instance, if I remember correctly, I think it was a David Wells, no hitter. There was also a Beanie Baby giveaway. So that Beanie Baby comes up, more value because of what happened in that particular game. So I guess it's also what happens in that particular game.
So Mark, you know what the most important part of that collectible was of the Beanie Baby Day? Can you hear me?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I can hear you. I don't remember.
So it's actually the little ticket that went with it. Because without it, you just had a Valentino bear. But it's the ticket. If you have them separated, then it doesn't have the value of that day, because those two things together make the value of that. You bring up the David Wells thing. I actually took those bears and the tickets and the actual ticket, and David signed them. And David, I framed a collage shadow box with the bear sitting on a bench. And David, that year after that, gave them out as gifts. I shadow boxed them, framed them, and sent them out as gifts to some of his friends for Christmas. So we had the bear sitting on a bench with a photo of the perfect game, with the ticket from his perfect game, signed David Wells, I think it was done in '98. I think his perfect game was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned, some of the magazines where like there are advertisements. So we've all seen those metal reprints of the Ted Williams Moxie root beer.
Right.
An original ad of Ted Williams doing that, or you had in 1969 a whole bunch of the guys doing the original Gillette, whether it be Johnny Bench or a couple of the Mets did some foamy ads and things like that. The original Rangers and the Sassoon ads. Are those worth anything? And to that end, my friend actually came across some 1963 football yearly periodical, and he was flipping through it. And in the back, it was, mentioning all these punt, pass, and kick winners in different districts. And there was a picture of Gary Carter as a 1963 punt, pass, and kick guy. I know also sometimes when I'll pull like an old Sports Illustrated, I'll go to the back, those faces in the crowd, and you'll see high school. I found one of Darryl Strawberry doing something in Crenshaw High School. Did those particular oddities, when you find something like that, make the magazine more valuable, or is it just, okay, it's, there's so many of the magazines, it doesn't really make it valuable at all?
If it's, probably if it's Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, really big name people, Strawberry probably not. But if you're talking about like legendary status, players, it probably does a little bit because it's where they started from. So if you have a collector that's looking for things like that, who's an advanced collector, then they're gonna want that. So
couple of interesting facts. All right, so Dick Tidrow was a right-handed pitcher. All right, some of the things go into. So when you mentioned Brett, people started talking about the Pine Tar game, and I don't remember this, but according to Kip Gross, Don Mattingly played second base in that Pine Tar game. I do not remember Mattingly ever. I got to look that up. I do not remember Mattingly ever playing second base. So that's an interesting fact. You're going to have to look that up afterwards. So, and then Mark actually asked it, did Guidry play center field in that game? There might have been something with the lineup.
But Guidry had played center field on a couple of occasions. I don't know about that game. It's a possibility. When it was replayed or before?
It was the replay, I think.
Maybe the replay.
It was when they picked up the suspended game. And that I think that's when they had the weird positions.
I think it was picked up in August.
Yeah, but they picked it up from the middle of the game, and there was somebody who, after the original game, was traded, and he was in the lineup. So I think they had to. I forget who it was. He may have been traded to Kansas City.
So Mattingly played in the replay.
It was the replay.
Right. Yeah. I just confirmed that. That's true. Wow, that's great. Now, Kip.
Good stuff.
I want to know if Kip knew that from how. Remembering from Don, how'd you know that?
Yeah, we'll have to ask him. So, this is an interesting collectible. All right, that someone has in the chat room. He has a bat signed by Hank Aaron and Sarah Hara, the two home run leaders at the time. That's a neat collector. That's something you like. You put things together.
Yeah, I like that. So Nathan, is it on a Hank Aaron game model bat, and have they inscribed their home run total?
We have to ask him about that. Hopefully he'll get that. So it was the ninth inning where Mattingly played second, it looks like, when they finished the game. Kip, if you're still there, Scott wanted to know if you remembered that, or you saw a replay, or how you actually knew that, or did Don tell you later on, or some of the players that were involved that later on when you were in your career, did they let you know? But that's pretty cool.
I don't know why I don't remember. That's 1983. That's Mattingly's rookie year. And he's a lefty. And he's a lefty playing second base.
Yeah.
It was. I think it was Billy Martin, putting the middle finger up, his idea of that game. But for a long time, that was like the greatest trivia question.
Okay, did he get a chance at second?
That'd be interesting. So yeah, people are out there. They can Google it while we're talking. So the box score. AJ's trying to do it very nice. That is.
Brought that up to me. I can't believe
Guidry played center field, Mattingly second base in the August game. Lenny said Billy was pulling out all the stops. So I think Scott just went to find out. There he is. That's good stuff. All right, so here we got the answer that you wanted about the bat. All right, They inscribe their home run totals, but it's not on a Hank Aaron bat. The bat is called International Home Run Leader. So it must have been something manufactured specifically as a collectible, I'm assuming.
They inscribe the home run totals, but it's not on a Hank Aaron bat. That's called International. So they did inscribe the home run totals. Sadhauer.
Yep.
Well, we know that Hank Aaron hit 755. Sadhauer hit like an exponential amount, like 800 home runs or something, right? 800 and something home runs.
Yeah.
You know total? 868.
I don't know the exact total.
Mark,
so all right. So yeah, I'm getting old. 5 years ago, I probably remembered it.
I have a trivia question about the 78 Yankees afterwards, even though we're going off the Dodgers, but it's kind of related. 868 is right, actually, and that was from. Is that right? So that I'm right. Karen she just confirmed that. That's from memory. Show that. I want you to show that alibi. Do you have that? I sent it to you last minute. The Dodgers alibi.
You sent it to me. Of course, I got it. Here we go.
It's a sympathy card. So this is one of the things that I will never sell in my collection. This I have never seen another one, and if you look, it's original. In 1951, when Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world off Ralph Branca, the Dodgers sent out to only, I believe, some of their season ticket holders a sympathy card. As it reads, we let you down. We all did, and we are so sorry. We have no alibis. Your loyalty, particularly at this time, is deeply appreciated. All the Dodgers. That to me is unbelievably incredible.
Wow.
It's very cool. That's great. So it'd be interesting.
By the way, Mark, I just looked this up. The reason that Guidry played center field because Jerry Mumphrey, who was the center fielder, was traded between the time the game happened and the game was picked up. So, and Billy Martin, Mattingly was placed there as a protest, and Billy Martin got Guidry in center field because he didn't want to waste a pinch hitter. You want to save a pinch hitter if you needed one. That's what it says on Wikipedia.
So do we know if Guidry got a chance or Mattingly got a chance in the field? That would be interesting.
I think Mattingly did get a chance. From what I
that.
There's a couple of people commenting on that piece, the condolence card, the sympathy card. Yeah. Great piece. That's a cool piece. So, again, and this is the thing, when, God forbid, someone loses their parent and they go and they clean out their house and it's an overwhelming task. Someone might come across that and not know what it is and just throw it out. That's, there's so many pieces of these, of history around that people take for granted and they just throw it out. You are on the lookout for these things, like that particular piece. Do you remember how you came about it and how you found it?
That actually, the alibi, the sympathy card?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got that from Steve Jacobson, who was a
the Newsday writer?
Yeah, so he's a family friend of mine, and I purchased a lot of his collection, and that was one of the things that he got as a child, not when he was a writer, obviously. He wrote, probably for 40 years for Newsday, finishing up, at least 40 years, Steve. And Joe Gergen actually also was a family friend. They both were New York Newsday sports writer. They both from Lido Beach, from Long Beach area. But after I bought Steve's collection, Joe came to me and said, "Oh yeah, I heard you bought Steve's collection. Now you got to buy my collection." So I ended up buying both of them, and their stuff that I bought to me that was the coolest thing I got actually.
But it's also interesting because you made mention it's something you will never sell. Correct. Okay, so is there a place in your store? I mean, when you buy these entire collections, when you go through it, it's, is it got it, keep it, this is Scott's pile. How do you determine, why is that particular thing I have to imagine you come across millions of cool items a day. Why is that particular item, and you didn't see the Brooklyn Dodgers play, right?
Cool. It's so cool. It's a sympathy card from the shot around the world that you don't see. I don't know. There's something about it that hit a spot with me that I just never seen it before. And I just think it's a team sending out I'm sorry, we apologize. When have you seen that before?
See, if the Mets would do that, they do that along with the application for next year's season ticket. They turn it into a marketing opportunity.
Right. If they gave you free tickets to the game, we're sorry, and here's something. I don't know if they gave anything else other than a sympathy card. I don't know if a free ticket came to pick your game. I don't know. That I don't know. That came
Or if it was the Mets, they said a sympathy card to the family of Jim Gosker while he's still alive. So,
Going back, I can I have a couple other cool things. If anybody wants to see anything else cool, there was a program in 1949. The Brooklyn Dodgers All-Star game was at Ebbets Field. That's an actual more difficult program to find.
Well, you also have this, right? This is a Pee Wee Reese, game worn hat, which is interesting because it's a 10-year period. And how do you go about authenticating years when it comes to a game used hat?
So I'm going to go into a little bit of the game use stuff. You have a couple of professional athletes that are there, right? So they kind of have an idea. But you kind of, in order to make, it's a he said, she said. So you need to get as much information as you can. I think we touched upon it on a couple of other shows that you want to do a photo match. You want to try to find the player wearing it, the history of it, right? There's a letter there, and that's been notarized by the daughter of the man that worked. I think it was either Schaefer. I can't see it. I don't remember, but it was Schaefer or a beer company that was a salesman back in 1948. And supposedly did a promotion with the Dodgers and then went back to the locker room and he gave him the hat. Then there's a picture, which I didn't show you, of the gentleman with Jackie Robinson, Pee Wee Reese, pictured together. That adds it. And then, she notarizes it and gives as much history as she can. And that's the best that you can do to give provenance to the hat. And then the professional knows the stampings. Did I send you the underbearings of the hat, or I didn't?
No, just the hat and the letter.
Okay, well I have that. So it's Spalding. You can kind of date it and mark it if you know the details of when those hats were manufactured. Things like same thing. It transpires for a bat. Was that bat player's weight? Was that bat on his ordering forms? And a professional athlete like Mark or whatever would know that they would order things to specifications of the player, and it would be marked, and there would be certain years that they could do the research that they were manufacturing.
Get to that end, I know that like on the bottom of the game worn jerseys, they have like set 1 of 2, or there's like different things sewn in, and each team had different tags that you can go and research.
That's more like 70s, 80s, and whatever. But earlier than that, they didn't really have that in those set ones, and so you're talking about more like 70s and 80s and 90s, stuff like that. But that could also be, you could also have an issued one. It could also not be the players. You have to really know what you're doing, because a lot of those jerseys in the 70s and 80s, to be honest with you, other players used it and they took numbers off, they restitched it and stuff like that. So you really have to know what you're looking for, because it could be a jersey that was used by somebody else, but it really wasn't the player. You really have to know that stuff. It's hard to teach it.
So I don't know what it is about you, Scott, but we've got 3 former major leaguers all tuning into you. So besides Littell and Kip Gross, now you got Brett Boone watching as well. So if you had a question about what was the question you asked about jerseys, how the players would know, if it's theirs or not?
It's more in ordering bats. I think it's, you can, certain bats were ordered certain times, the weights of the bats, what they used. You could actually look back at the history from the company. Let's use Louisville Slugger, a powerized bat, a certain model. Certain players use certain weights within within a half an ounce. You'd weigh it out or whatever. The players might not remember, but they all would order. Like you asked Brett, he would order a certain bat, right? He was comfortable with. He would have a weight. He would order it probably from Louisville Slugger. Ask him if he can hear me. What company bat did he use? What weight bat did he use? I'm sure he could tell you.
But that's also interesting because over the course of time, players' bats change. Like in the beginning of a career, a batter might use a heavier weight. As he gets older, he might go to a lighter weight. Then there was the whole thing I'm trying to remember who was. I think it. And maybe I'm wrong. If I remember correctly, maybe the first batter to ever, hollow out the top of the bat was Ivan Morel of the Padres. Then you had that whole thing with the tops being hollowed out. So, even though it's at a certain weight, it was different because they kind of worked on their bats and made them different, than the specification. Then there's the different types of wood. I remember when Gary Carter was trying to hit, one of his last home runs. I think it was the white or something like that, certain type of or ash. and they could no longer get the ash wood, so there was different woods, and he felt that the wood in the bat was different. So players are very particular about their bats for sure. Not so much their gloves, but more their bats.
I would think their gloves too. I mean, come on, you want to be comfortable with the glove that you're using. I mean, also, players would have relationships with companies, right? So they might change year to year. They might have a contract with a company. So you're seeing them change from, a Louisville Slugger to
Adirondack was another one. Yeah.
Adirondack, big stick bat. Now there's so many, Mizuno and all these bat companies now are people change. I mean, they change. Back in the day, they didn't change as much. So when you go into the 70s and stuff, these guys use mostly the same kind of bats. I'm going to bring out a couple of bats just to show you, like, I have a Julio Franco bat. You got to see this bat because the handle is like, and he played for how many years?
He used it last week.
Forever.
I haven't met that. I haven't met that.
So wait, before you go to get the bat, so this is an interesting question in the chat room from Barry Shelley. How do you appraise an item? Their store, he lives up in Cooperstown, obviously. Our stores here in Cooperstown seem to have their baseball items for so much more. I know because I guess it's a tourist trap, so they're trying to capitalize on the market there. So how do you appraise an item?
You don't want me to get me started with the Cooperstown thing, because it's another story. We could do a whole show on that. How do I appraise it? I appraise it based on. There's so many factors that go into appraising an item. You're talking about a game-used item? Specifically, what are you talking about appraising?
Right. So we'll have to get more information. In the meantime, let's show us your bats. What do you got there now? So that's a Julio Franco?
I have tons of – I'm only showing this because this has a lot of wear on it. This is more of a – Julio – this is, I believe, a Met bat on Julio Franco. It's a lot of wear. You generally don't see a bat with so much wear on it. But I love the handle on this bat. You see the handle? Can you see it? It's like almost like
it looks like a Jeff O'Neill model.
Yeah, right. What's it called? I forgot what they call it.
There's no That's pretty interesting.
This is a cool handle. It's got a lot of wear on it. Just like Julio had. He had a lot of wear because
especially when he was on the Mets, right? So a guy like Julio Franco, I mean, obviously because of his, tenure and the amount of games he played, that's an oddity. But like a Julio Franco signed bat, what's a market for that?
Well, this bat, again, this bat has tremendous use. If you look at the use on it, the value of something is based on, did he play with it? Is it lightly played? It's like a baseball card, right? What do we grade this bat on a scale of 1 to 10 with usage, with, cleat marks, ball marks? It's crazy, but that's, you want to know that it was played and used and enjoyed, and that's going to give it. Julio Franco is valuable only a little bit, only because he played for how many years, Mark? How to play for teams, and I think he played for 24 years. I mean, he's playing for 40.
Scott, is there any value to a game-used broken bat?
Yeah, there is, but there's less value. This bat isn't really fully broken, but it does have cracking, so he wouldn't be using it. So it's better to have a bat that's not cracked. But this bat's very, very heavy. I would venture to guess that this bat, I mean, he was older, but he swung a very heavy bat. There's a few guys that swung heavy bats. Alfonso Soriano swung a really heavy bat. Gary Sheffield swung a really heavy bat.
Richie Allen was like a sledgehammer, the thing he used. It's crazy.
Yeah. Going back to value on this and its sign, and this is something that came out of when they were doing more of the authenticating. So MLB authenticated this. It's probably, I don't know when Franco finished up with the Mets. Would you know, Mark? Is it like late 90s, 2000?
I'm thinking 93.
It was later.
No, I don't think it was. You know what? I'll tell you right now. Hold on.
It's probably in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I think it's in the 2000s.
It's in the 2000s because this is on the MLB program and they didn't have it in the 90s. So it could be 2000.
Last game, September 17, 2007 for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
His last game with the Mets, he so broken in 82 to 2007.
Yeah.
So he was on what year?
2000.
The Mets 2006 to 2007.
Okay, so this is probably a 2006 bat. It's got the MLB program on it. That's why I knew it had to be in that period of time. Just from stuff like that. So I'm going to give you you asked me about
wait. All right, this freaks me out.
What?
How old would you say Julio Franco is?
Today? Or when
I saw something about him about last week in the paper. He's like 57 and still looking to play.
He's 61 years old. That's all he is.
He's 61
That's
years
crazy.
old, but he played until 2007, 13 years ago. So
Right, 49 years. He was 49 years old, right? Yeah. 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 Crazy.
Henderson played.
Absolutely.
Like Henderson played till he was probably 43, 44. Right?
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Rickey Henderson. Let's see. Here's a Rickey Henderson gamer. I'll pull out a Rickey Henderson game. This is not. He didn't really use Adirondack that often, but this is an Adirondack. I think later in Rickey's life. Can you see that? Henderson?
Yeah. That looks like a Mets, I think I saw underneath.
Does it say? No, it says professional model, but I have a letter from PSA on this. There's PSA does authentications on these. So there is a letter and it tells you that it was so this is actually early. So this is early Henderson, I guess in his early days.
Oakland.
Yes, this is 1980. This is an 80 to 83.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is early and would make it more valuable. He probably went on later, I think, to use Louisville Slugger mostly. I think he used a black Louisville and a brown at times. I mean, he did go all over the boards, but so this would make this a little bit more valuable because it's early in his career. I have a Sheffield bat. Just to talk, we're talking about like heavy bats. This is really heavy. I wonder if it has.
So here's the shame of it, Scott.
By the way, Julio Franco is currently the hitting coach for the Lodi Giants in the Korean Baseball League.
So we might see him at 5:25 a.m. on ESPN.
Exactly. I remember reading that last week. I just found this. Yeah.
So Scott, here's the shame of it. All right. So these items, okay. I mean, obviously, we all want stores to be open, but they're not open right now.
Right.
You don't have all these items on your website, right? I mean, we should almost do one day. We should just be auctioning these things off, a live auction for these bats. So that right now is a Sheffield bat, right?
This is a heavy bat. I actually want to give this, and I'm going to weigh it and give you an answer of what the weight is on this because I don't think anybody's swinging a heavier bat than this in the game of baseball. And you know how Sheffield would hold the bat, right? I mean, he would.
Yeah.
I mean, the way he had it up, I mean, I don't know how he was. You have to be awfully strong to swing this.
I'd like to find out what Richie Allen's bat was because I remember that thing was huge. And I think Pudge Fisk also used a really heavy bat too. But here's an interesting question, all right? And AJ's going to kill me for putting it up there, but I gotta show the guy some love.
Here comes a
so Scott into baseball items. Would love to see hockey items if he has any.
So Barry, I just gave to a big auction in Canada some really, really great items. I had Billy Smith's goalie pads from the 80s, which I just sent to Montreal for major auction. I had a rare was it Team Canada Gretzky jersey that I just sent out. Any specific? I'm trying to think what I have that's unique. Just a lot of game use sticks, some All-Star game jerseys. I have warm-up. I have a practice jersey on Martin Brodeur. I'm not as huge into I have a good amount of hockey, but baseball is really more of my specialty. But I definitely have plenty of hockey.
So, this is interesting also because after, I think, our first or second show when we talked about when you downsize and you don't have the room to continue that huge collection, you want to find like a little niche. So we talked about those Citgo tumblers, and then we talked about the Citgo portraits, and I was telling my friend about it. So I sent them pictures of them this morning. I found the album that I had them in, but I also had those yellow Hall of Fame postcards with a bunch of them had been autographed.
Yes.
That's a pretty neat thing. But then I was looking for hockey to see if they had something similar with their Hall of Fame. And they had something in the 80s that I think it was called Capco something postcards, and they seem very rare. Do those Hall of Fame type issue cards that get autographed, do they have any added value because they're issued by the Hall of Fame and it's harder to get them all autographed?
It goes back to rarity. Maybe the hockey ones because I haven't really seen them. baseball ones are very, very accessible. The only baseball ones that are really on the rare end are the older white ones that were done back in, the 50s. That you have players that are from older, but the modern, you're talking about the yellow ones that you go and you buy them for a quarter, whatever it is. They're nice to have, but they're, for whatever reason, on the value end of them, unless somebody made the Hall of Fame and then died shortly thereafter and it becomes a rare item because they weren't around very long, that's the only time where that Hall of Fame postcard will be worth more money because the person only lived a certain amount of time after you made the Hall of Fame. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah.
So the Hall of Fame, the baseball ones are not worth that much. They're pretty commonplace, to be honest.
Yeah, because you see a lot of them on eBay, and then unless they don't have the certificate of authenticity, backing up the autograph, they could be worthless. But it's just interesting. You're always looking for something that takes little amount of space, which is something cool to look for, like the pins. That would be a cool.
Pins are perfect for you, Mark. You can put them in a drawer, and Beth won't kill you.
The pins are great. I could show a little quickly if anybody cares to see it. I don't know. I'm doing a show and tell. Where is my pin book? Because I really love pins. So I also brought a 1938 Brooklyn Dodger team ball to show that is the only year that Babe Ruth was a coach on the team with the Brooklyn Dodgers. So there's a crossover to that, which I think is really cool, right? Because how many people have Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, not that you don't want it, on a Yankee team ball? How many people have Babe Ruth on the sweet spot of a 1938 Brooklyn Dodger ball, right? So to me, that's a hell of a lot rarer than having him on a Yankee ball because he signed so many Yankee balls. I mean, not that you don't want it because it's Babe Ruth, but on a Brooklyn Dodger ball, especially if you collect oddball stuff or Brooklyn Dodgers, that's going to be something cool. So I could show. Did I take a picture and send it to you? I didn't even get a chance.
I don't. No, that one you didn't. Okay. I don't believe so.
If anybody wants to see it, you can let me know and I'll show it to you.
So all right, so that's Babe Ruth when he was the third base coach, right? He was the third base coach for the Dodgers for very little time.
Jumping back to the Gary Sheffield, does anyone want to take it? Anybody want to? We waited. Does anyone want to?
Oh, you waited?
Yeah. Does anyone want to take a guess on how many ounces it is?
So Sal, put in the chat room that Allen's were in the 40-ounce range. So I can't imagine. Yeah, yes, I'm telling you, it was. I'm saying 38 ounces. Me too, 38 ounces.
The Sheffield that we weighed, but I don't know if the scale is accurate, is 35 ounces. But it feels very heavy. It feels very heavy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, but I remember picking up a Richie Allen bat somewhere, and I'm going like, how did this guy swing the bat? It was like it was so heavy. So very interesting stuff. So this is an interesting piece that hockey related. Barry Shelley has a original invitation to a ball that was held in honor of Lord Stanley back in the 1800s.
Wow,
that's pretty cool. Yeah, well, unfortunately, he can email or he can email you. He said he's checking out your website, so your email address is on there.
My website needs a lot of work, and please forgive me, but it's got to be revamped. So. But you can send me a picture to my email, short, sales@cardboardmemories.com. I think, Mark, you posted it the last time.
Yeah, I posted it. Also, the phone number's up there also. You can give them a call also. So, all right. So we've now, what are you looking at the pins?
Yeah, can you see them?
All right.
Can you see?
Got to hold them up a little bit. Okay, so now this is also important, and you mentioned this when we were talking about the Roberto Clemente pin. The edges, you need to make sure these are not reprints, because I would imagine a pin is probably easier to forge than a card, right?
The copy, yeah, because you could take a piece of paper and you can make a copy of it, stick it back inside of a plastic pin that they make. You have to look at the back, the markings, the stampings, the indentations, where they were created. Sometimes you will actually want to see, although it takes a little value, the oxidizing of the back of the pin. You can see some oxidation. You can, if you know what you're looking for, you can see the backs of these. Can you see? I don't know.
Yeah, you can see the rust. So go back to the front page if you can for a second, Scott. I think third one down, the blue background. That's a Jackie pin, right?
No, in the front page.
Yeah, front page, first column, third down, in the light blue background.
Leon Jones.
That's Don Newcomb.
Don Newcomb.
Oh, Don Newcomb. Okay, cool. So it's interesting that one stands out because of the blue background, and did they do? Did they do different? Oh, those are the common. So the color, the background color, had to do with the player or the year of the button.
They could have made. They made white ones. They made blue ones. They made variations. They made yellow ones. Yellow and blue are generally the more common ones. It's when you find rarer variations of. You have to know what to look for, like pictures of them, different pictures of them that were rarer. It's like anything else. You have to learn what you're looking at and get a feel for what's out there, what's more accessible or that you see. And they're called variations. Like in anything collectible, there's variations or rarities and stuff. You mentioned that pin that was worth a lot of money that you had got from the Newark Eagle, right? The Newark Eagle or Ledger.
The Brooklyn Eagle, right?
Right. So
for that,
here's a bunch
obviously, you know, right. So here's the issue. Baseball cards, obviously, there's Beckett. There's a lot of information out there, you know, setting the value. You know, years ago, they used to publish every year the updated, you know, price guide to find information on buttons, because there's so many different variations, so many different buttons and pins. Where do you research something like that?
So it's an old book, but the gentleman's name is, I think, Paul Macharski. I don't know if I have the spelling right. I wrote to him many, many, many years ago, and he has a very, very big, probably 400-page book on buttons and collecting. But again, it's priced back probably 20 years ago. But it gives you an idea of value and rarity. So you have an idea if something shows at $2,000, it's going to be rarer than the button that shows at $75. So you can kind of get an idea and a feel. It's just a parameter. But it's a blue hardcover book. I don't know if he's alive anymore. He wrote me this wonderful, beautiful note on my book that I treasure, you know, that I have at my house. I should have brought it in, actually. I thought about it. His name is Paul, and it's something with an M. It's Macharski or Machinsky or something of that nature. I'll get you that.
So what you can do is what you can do at the very bottom of this, when you get back, you can just post it in the comments so people can go back and look.
I'll take a picture and I'll post it. Very good idea.
Right. All right. So in wrapping up, Brooklyn Dodgers collectibles, you know, obviously we're talking about that window, you know, somewhat, you know, closing a little bit. So if someone has that interest now and wants to pass it on, is this the time to buy them? Because maybe with the interest waning a little bit, the prices start to come down, or it makes no difference?
I don't really know the answer. I used to think I knew the answers, and I would say what I felt the answer was. And sometimes when you add 2 and 2 together, they don't always equal 4 in memorabilia world. So I would say that the Brooklyn Dodger market was probably a little bit stronger back in the mid-'90s to the early mid-2000s. I do believe that because people got older and passed away, that connection that we spoke about isn't there as much. I believe, though, that like anything else, if you have quality collectibles that aren't around and people start to learn that they'll always be collectible. Again, it's important to connect to it. So we don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know. I don't know post-coronavirus. I don't know what the world's going to be. I will tell you that collectibles are still strong. I will tell you that they've been resilient. You can look after 9/11. You can look after 2008. You could buy a stock, but it's just a company. You buy a piece of memorabilia that you love, there'll always be interest in it. Whatever you like to collect, I tell you, collect it for the love, and the value will come. Don't collect it for the value. Collect it for the love. I hope people will do that.
That's a perfect note to end on. We'll have to figure out what the topic for next week is. We appreciate all the listen. Towards the end, you got a whole bunch of ex-hockey players. Steve Baker was in there. Bill Bennett was in there, and I think people like the different time, because I think a lot of people starting to go back and aren't around in the afternoons during the weekday. So we'll work that out a little bit, and we'll come up with another topic. We'll get that topic out there. Really appreciate it, Scott, as always. If anyone has any questions, they can always call Scott at 631-462-1919. They can visit his website. The website has been streaming below as well, cardboardmemories.com. Or you can just throw comments at the end of the broadcast. We'll go back, and if Scott doesn't get to him, I'll forward it to him as well.
We also have a Cardboard Memories page. You can like it. You can reach out to me. Please, any questions that you have any interest in stuff, I love to help. I love to answer. I love to have conversation back and forth. So don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone in the chat room, and just keep watching the page. We'll let you know when the next one's going to be. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you. Take care. Happy collecting. Stay safe.